Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. We are already overshot our time for commencement of activity this morning, and I know that because of the activities that went very late yesterday, some people are not here, but we have to go ahead, we can wait. Also the fact that there's another session holding in another hall, so I know why the situation is like this, but we have programs. Our chairman for this morning is distinguished Senator Patrick Ayo Akinye-Lure. Senator Akinye-Lure is the chairman of the Senate Committee oversighting the Ombudsman in Nigeria. They also oversight the Code of Conduct Bureau, Code of Conduct Tribunal. So he's chairing this morning's session. I have the pleasure now to request distinguished Senator Ayo Akinye-Lure to please come forward and commence the program.
I want to welcome all the representatives of countries, the Ombudsman in Africa, and I want to thank all of you for organizing this event. We are giving glory to God that we are here together. And at the end of this program, we wish everybody, journey messages back home. We are on expert section 3, introduction to the session. We have the when Ombudsman fights corruption. Among our speakers this morning, we have Dr. Robert Content, Advisor, Commonwealth Secretary of London. We have also Barrister Mugaji Remy Gado, Executive Chairman, Kano State Public Complaints and Anti-Corruption Commission. And we also have when Ombudsman fight corruption, lesson of experience. Justice Irene Moyanga. Just pardon me for the pronunciation of the names. Inspector General of the Government of Uganda. And the last but not the least is promoting integrity in public life, the political ombudsman of Jamaica, and lesson of experience. Honorable Mrs. Donna Punchman Brown, the political ombudsman of Jamaica. Among the four of them, we'll take the Kano, the Kano State Public Complaints Commission Anti-Corruption, the Executive Chairman, to come and make a presentation because we have jumped to number 2 to be number 1 because he has a flight to catch. Pardon me for giving him the audience to come and make his presentation before the. So thank you.
I was in the chairman of this occasion, distinguished Senator Patrick Ayo, the Honorable Chief Commissioner, the Public Complaints Commission. I said Federal because I heard the State Public Complaints and Anti-Corruption Commission. Other distinguished guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, the title of the paper, When Ombudsman Fight Corruption, you can say, has best suited my person due to the fact that I am in charge of an agency that I have dual mandate of fighting corruption as well as ombudsman. We're the only agency as of national level and at the same time in the whole country where we have both criminal jurisdiction to fight corruption and the civil jurisdiction to mediate disputes among the people. Why the Public Complaints and Anti-Corruption Commission is that because people might argue that we have a Federal Public Complaints Commission, but why is the state having similar agency? In answering that, the paper highlighted the fact that Nigeria operates federal system of government, which is a complex of systems that allow for two legislation, that is concurrent and exclusive legislation, whereby the states have the power concurrently to legislate on certain cases alongside the federal government. And that's been the case. The Kano State enacted a law in 2000 and to create Public Complaints and Anti-Corruption Commission, an agency which is copied, is a prototype of the Federal Public Complaints Commission, because the Act of Federal Public Complaints Commission is reproduced in the law that established the Kano State Public Complaints and Anti-Corruption Commission, as well as that of the ICPC, matched together to give us the law with the legal backing. The Kano State Public Complaints and Anti-Corruption Commission was a directorate in 2005 under the Cabinet Office and later upgraded status of the Commission. A law to back it up was equally enacted in 2008, as I said. Although the Kano Ombudsman was fashioned following the Federal Commission, it is distinguishable because the State Commission is Christian as the Public Complaints and Anti-Corruption Commission. As I said, as the name entails, it was dual mandate. Now, what ombudsman fights corruption? Ordinarily, based on our experience as ombudsman in fighting corruption, ombudsman is fighting corruption because some, if not all, the complaints before him were occasioned by corrupt practices. With the corruption there, there will be no social justice. As it stands today, Kano State Public Complaints and Anti-Corruption Commission, as the name implies, remains the only public institution with dual mandate, as I said. As an agency serves with the responsibility to ensure that no act of government official and its agency resulted in the commission of any act of injustice, any member of the public, the experiences garnered in the course of this gathering, in the course of discharging our statutory responsibilities are some lessons that was mentioned. Based on the experience we have mentioned, as I said, is that the idea of ombudsman is for poor, because most of the people that patronize our commission are people that cannot afford the complex legal system of going to court. They cannot hire a lawyer. And most of the cases, you can see that sometimes you will start a case as a civil case, but instantly it will turn to be a criminal case because the injustice method might be resulted to corrupt practices. It also improves access to justice, and it increases the synergy between the agencies. Some of the cases handled by and received by the Public Complaints and Anti-Corruption Commission that we can be able to showcase the fact that an ombudsman of this nature is fighting corruption is a case of a microfinance bank. The state established 37 microfinance banks. These microfinance banks are to mitigate the suffering of the rural dwellers, especially in terms of economic hardship. But unfortunately, some people cornered the money. It is the commission that investigates the matter. We're able to identify the problems and we're able to take appropriate measures, including taking the culprit to court. We received a case of a plot of land was 76 hectares. And this plot of land belonged to individuals, is the heirs of a person, a particular person. And the power that be revoked the land, the title of the land, because initially it was allocated as a farm, as an agricultural farm, a land. And they have developed it. They have even go to the extent that to establish a house and dig holes and what have you. But part of the reason the government say they have revoked the land is because they did not develop it. And in investigation, we are able that the land was issued or was reallocated to a company called Waeko Nigeria Limited. A simple search at the Corporate Affairs Commission suggests that the company was not even in existence. And these people has denied their rights. And this plot of land is worth billions of naira, about 2 billion of naira. So what we did was to investigate and find out who are those people that started building on this land, because we were able to retrieve the file of the land, and we could not establish the real ownership because there was no letter headed that would suggest that these people are even existent. So the dilemma is for us to even identify who are those people, because even the Minister of Land at then could not tell us that who are those people. But the commissioner at that time, in giving out the statement, said that he was instructed to do that. So we now search using some names that we now find out the name reflected as Water and Agricultural Engineering Company Limited, and to our greatest surprise, we were able to find out that this company belonged to certain individual instrumental to the revocation and the allocation to themselves. So the land is now reverted back to the original owners, and we are preparing to take the matter to the court. On coming on board as well, as part of the corrupt practices syndicates in the Ministry of Land, which is now Bureau for Land Management, we now find out that there is a unit called One-Stop Shop. That One-Stop Shop is responsible for boycotting all the bureaucrats in the management of land issues in Kano State. So we were confronted with sometimes double allocation of land. And if you are to look at the document, you find out that all the documents are identical and perhaps is from one source. So it was a nightmare. At the end of the day, we were able to, based on the investigation, and because of the series of the cases we received, we were able to find out that the Ministry of Land is responsible for that double allocation, whereby many people lost their plots of land, worth millions of naira. We were able to crack that, to wreck that syndicate, and at the same time, for the first time in the history of this country, we prosecute a serving commissioner, a serving permanent secretary, and a director. And in the course of that, we were able to break that syndicate to ensure that justice is done. And as I'm talking to you now, 90% of that double allocation has been reduced in that state. Another case we were confronted with is the judiciary. I'm sorry to use this word. We have lower courts. That lower courts in Kano, that's what they call, if you go to the court now, because access to justice is key to the survival of each and every nation. Because where there is no justice, people may resort to self-help, and it will not be good to any society. So now, when people come to the court, there's what we know in my own dialect, Dila the liar. Dila the liar is somebody who is there in the court to guide you on how to win a case, whether you are right or you are wrong. And apart from that, we have many courts. I cannot say the number up here now, but we have both Sharia court and magistrate court. But our law, under Section 2, define public servant to include those serving in any capacity in the state civil service or local government, and to include those serving in the magistrate court, Sharia court, and tribunal. So without deem it is appropriate for us to investigate what is happening there. And we're able to find out that even the money generated for fine and other administrative charges in the court are not being limited to the government. So we started investigating this matter. You see, because it's a situation whereby somebody is being fined, and the person that fined him ended up using the process of the fine. So we see it as a sheer injustice and something that must be dealt with. When we started investigating the matter, the process, because we were able to even retrieve or confiscate the stamp they used to even port the teller. Because what they used to do is to go to the bank, obtain a teller, because auditors can go to the court and audit the account of the court. So if the auditors come to the court, they will see as if they have deposited the money in the government account, which initially is not true. Under Section 26 of the Kano State Public Complaints and Anti-Corruption Commission law, that is a crime, and that is why we investigated the matter. In investigating the matter, the Judicial Staff Union challenged the commission, and we have to go to the court to solve it. In that judgment in the High Court of Kano State, it was held that yes, we can investigate them, but it must be through the consent of the Chief Judge of Kano State, who is the chairman of the Judicial Service Commission. We appealed the matter to the Court of Appeal, and I'm happy to tell you that this has given us a boost, because the Court of Appeal disagreed with the High Court and said that we have the powers to investigate that these people, and it is our liberty, and it is not compulsory for us to even take recourse to the CJ and CJ for us to investigate. And this is something that I believe have reduced drastically the suffering of the people, because all these people that are making it difficult for people to access justice has been taken care of. We have a police scholarship. We have many more cases. I was told that I have only 18 minutes, but there are some of many cases, because in my 4 years of chairman and that public complaints and anti-corruption, I'm now in my 5th year, which is the last year. I was able to treat much less than 4,000 cases. We receive about 11,000 cases, and some of the cases that are treated in a day. I have established 44 local government offices built with communication equipment, linked with the commission, so that we'll be able to monitor what they are doing at the 44 level. As I stand today, we have 46 ombuds offices across the 44 local government area of Kano State. So we have many cases. An average of 1 case per local government and an average of 20 cases at the headquarters will give you 60 cases per day. So it's a very cumbersome assignment. We have a case of 4.1 by bucket. This is one of the cases that touched my mind. This case is a case of a local government. That a local government chairman, when he came, now he colluded with some of his agents. There's a market established by a former governor of the state, alleged Sani Bello, is a military man. And since then, the people, the inhabitants of that market were doing their business. When this man came, what he was doing is, he used to allocate the stars already owned by some individual to other individual. This is the sheer injustice I've ever seen in my life. When they come to complain to the commission, and the man used to be, a dialect chain of the government in place. So he thought that he's untouchable. So we started investigating the matter, and we were able to find out that some people have to go and sell their properties. Some even sold their houses to make sure that they maintain their title in that place. And on average, we estimated that they were able to extort nothing less than 370 million naira from the people. So we started investigating the matter. We recovered a large sum of money, and in the process, the courts, because they followed all the necessary evidence for them to stop us from investigating the matter, and they could not succeed. So they went to the court through fundamental enforcement. The court asked us to stop, and in the process, when we even stop investigating, other people used to come. In my only understanding of the law, court orders are given in rem and personal, not in rem. So certainly, we just thought that we can continue investigating other matters that is brought before the commission. But unfortunately, I was cited for contempt because we continued to receive complaints and we were able to continue investigating the matter. Now we are waiting for our case at the court to be settled to continue. But what we did is we are able to, what we achieved is we were able to at least stop that process for now. Then we have a case of sale of offers. We are able to investigate a matter of selling of employment offers, whereby some people in the Ministry of Finance, because Kano State has a central salary system, so some people were selling offers, and in the process of selling offers, some people will not even get offers when their money has been collected. Even though too, the other people are not exempted from crime, but were able to investigate a director, and at the same time find out that we're able to investigate this matter, and at least the matter is now before a court. We equally have a case of rice farming. The farmers cannot have many irrigable dams that is capable of feeding the nation, so to say. And the federal government issued an intervention to Rice Farmers Association. They call it Anko Borrower scheme. And that Anko Borrower scheme, I was told by the investigators that at least Kano State received from 2017 to date, received nothing less than 10 billion naira. So 10 billion naira, if this money will definitely go down to the people, to the men farmers, I believe we'll be able to turn around things, especially in the area of rice issue in Nigeria. But unfortunately, there are syndicates of people that hijack this process. They are doing a lot of things to subvert the process, and the investigation is ongoing. But I can assure you that, inshallah, the commission will do its best to make sure that we turn around things.
And I believe that Ombudsman serves as a voice of the voiceless Nigerians and all the countries all over the world, and it's a place where people seek justice and peace for the people. I therefore advise that this should be promoted across the region. Then on that note, I don't think there's any question. No, democracy is the government of the people, for the people and by the people. And therefore, there are many, there are many people who voted us to power who don't have the means to seek justice in the law court as his experience. And therefore, I want to encourage, particularly in Nigeria, where we are democratically elected, and as the chairman of the Committee of Ethics, Privilege and Public Protection of the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, that is exactly what we do to assist those who are voiceless. We act at their voice. There are cases, in my own experience, in the 7th Assembly. I want to share the experience with everybody too. There was a case of being, terminating the appointment of 5 key general managers in a petroleum development trust fund. They were just sacked, and they were in court for many, up to 2 years. Towards the end of the administration of Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, they were sacked for no reason, because a lady wanted to be made to be what? To be the executive secretary above his bosses. These are line managers, general managers. And towards the end of 2015, one of my distinct colleagues, was advised that, come, why don't you bring this case before the Committee of Ethics in the Senate? Go and withdraw the case from court, because we don't entertain any cases in court. If a case is in court, if you go before my committee in the Senate, we trade back. So they withdrew the case from court. It was only 2 weeks towards the end of the 7th Assembly in the Senate. And we were able to invite all the petitioners and the respondents, and we said, please, come. Were the termination of these people lawful? Before the civil servant, they say it's not lawful. And therefore, it was because they cannot talk, because the actual Minister of Petroleum Resources then want them to be sacked. But when the woman was out of office, we brought these people to the Senate. And they both agreed that, come, they should be reinstated. So, the petitioner said they should be reinstated, and then the respondent said they should be reinstated. And as the chairman I gave the recommendation that they should be reinstated. Within 2 weeks, the case that had been in court for almost 3 years was resolved in one sitting. And immediately, I wrote to the then permanent secretary, Minister of Petroleum Resources, to reinstate the 5 general managers. Today, they are still in office. That was a case that cannot be resolved in court, because there are certain powers to be that they want their wish to be done. If we're against justice, against peace of the country. So this is what Ombudsman serve. And therefore it should be encouraged in all ramifications. Because there are voiceless Nigerians who cannot talk. Even those who are to speak the truth, to give the of truth, they will be constrained because of power to be. And therefore, I want to thank Barrister Remy Gado for his experience. So we now call on Dr. Roger, Advisor, Commonwealth Secretariat, London, to come and tell us a strengthening ombudsman for fighting corruption, lesson of experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, for inviting me here this morning to make this presentation on strengthening ombudsman for fighting corruption, lessons and experience. As the chairman mentioned, I'm the advisor and the head of the public sector governance in the Commonwealth Secretariat. I have a responsibility of all the 54 Commonwealth countries around the world when it had to do with corruption and governance. Last year, I was awarded the UN Global Anti-Corruption Excellence Award for innovation based on the anti-corruption work and governance work I've done around the world. Of course, in that award also, I think it was, I had it with a prominent Nigerian, named Rivado, who also had a lifetime award. So 2 Africans were on the platform on the world stage. I make very short introductory comment about ombudsmen and corruption. When countries started off, we have 3 generations of ombudsmen structure around the world. Countries, when they started off, the first generations where they put all ombudsmen, anti-corruption and human rights together. As time went on, they specialized. Country becomes more sophisticated. So they moved to the second generation, where they separated these functions. Where you have human rights institutions different, it has its own structure, anti-corruption agencies have their structure, and the ombudsman stand alone. Currently, we are in the 3rd generation because the country has moved on and become even more sophisticated. So you have what they call industry ombudsman. So then you're going to have ombudsman in police, ombudsman in the health sector, ombudsman in education, ombudsman in every sector, environment. That's where we are now. Because so that you can have a targeted focus for the ombudsman to deliver service to the voiceless. Now back to the topic I've been given. I would say fighting corruption is not the main or even the major function of ombudsman offices. They do not have the intrusive powers that are needed for that purpose. Such powers to conduct covert surveillance, intercept telephone calls, arrest suspects for questioning. Those functions are also resource intensive and beyond the capacity of most ombudsman offices around the world, particularly in Africa. Rather, the core function of ombudsman office is twofold: to handle complaints from members of the public about shortcomings of government decision-making and service delivery. And secondly, to conduct occasional own-motion investigation into systemic problems occurring either across government or in specific agencies. Ladies and gentlemen, corruption takes many forms, and many tactics are necessary as part of the strategy to effectively combat this global scourge. Although not originally designed to combat corruption, but rather to address grievances relating to administrative issues, the situation of ombudsman, with its unique set of tools and competences, and its focus on the quality of governance, has proven itself to be a useful ally in the struggle against this common human frailty. An ombudsman is an institution that therefore necessarily plays a complementary role in this regard. A classical ombudsman lacks executive authority. He or she normally possesses only persuasive powers in the form of the right to make recommendations or by means of the ability to engage in negotiation or mediation in order to resolve grievances. Now, this latter feature distinguishes it from other anti-corruption entities and agencies that usually possesses power of enforcement in some form. Whilst these differences may appear to relegate the Ombudsman to the backseat role in fighting corruption. The truth of the matter is that it is an advantage for several reasons. See, corruption has a core of meaning, usually understood to be reflected in the definition of criminal versions of the activity. But corruption may also be understood in the broader sense. Thus, corruption is defined in the Oxford Dictionary to mean 1, the destruction or spoiling of anything, especially by disintegration or by decomposition. Make deterioration with private. Corruption can be defined to mean perversion of integrity by bribery or favor, the use of existence of corrupt practices. Or it can also be defined to mean the perversion of anything from original state to purity. So thus, the deterioration of moral or ethical standards in public service, the perversion of integrity of its officials, and the inevitable results that will lead to, namely, the destruction of an efficient state administration, could be classified under the heading of corruption. There should be a happy. If one of them is not happy, bribery will not happen, nobody will happen. So, to bribe or accept bribe will be only one example. But the maladministration will also lead to corruption, in the broader sense, of the state administration. So it matters not whether such maladministration is due to ignorance or malefice or laziness or merely decision taking without due or proper consideration as opposed to deliberate malfeasance. Similarly, abuse of unjustifiable exercise of power could be an indication of a deterioration of ethical standards and the perversion of integrity. As unfair, it will be capricious, discourteous, or other improper conduct on the part of a public official. Even undue delay by an official could indicate such deterioration or perversion. This form of improper conduct could also be a manifestation of the deterioration of ethical standards or the perversion of integrity within the public service. And thus, corruption is in that broader sense. So these areas which are firmly within the public protector or the ombudsman brief or mandate, and as such indicate that the ombudsman is an important role player in fighting corruption, both in the narrow and the broader sense. The ombudsman is required to analyze trends in these behavioral areas in government and to recommend specific or systemic corrective actions in order to remove the cause of repetitive aberration of corrupt behavior. The fact that crimes and corruption does not occur within, the fact that crimes or corruption does occur within the public administration could be an indication of a systemic or structural defect. It is indeed the ombudsman's business to identify instances of systemic maladministration, and it is the ombudsman's brief to rectify this situation. Corruption can be defined as an act of involving the misuse of power for personal or sessional gain. practices in government undermines democracy, for they distort the normal decision-making process and subvert the policy objectives of legitimate democratic government. Corruption perpetuates discrimination as it results in an unfair advantage or undeserved benefit. Ultimately, corruption, if unchecked, can destroy a democratic society. Now, any conduct that falls within the bounds responsibility. Those complaints and investigation functions nevertheless play corruption in government. The impact is subtle but significant over time. The Ombudsman role of dealing annually with thousands of complaints across all areas of government is a message to the public servant that anything they can do, anything they do can be complained about or investigated by independent ombudsman office. In conducting an investigation, the ombudsman can demand access to internal documents, take evidence from the public and other public servants, and publish the findings of the investigation. Now, by looking constantly and unpredictability of what government is doing, the ombudsman can constantly be a reminder to government officials of the need to act lawfully and with integrity. Now, this can help build a culture of integrity in policing agencies that come within the ombudsman jurisdiction. The danger is that minor incidents of misuses of power, bullying suspect from ground up. Some ombudsman institutions have established in government agencies internal procedures for handling complaints from members of the public. This provides an added layer of scrutiny and transparency to what occurs within government. It is as much harder for any public servant to feel confident about engaging in wrongdoing without arousing suspicion when the ombudsman have their ears and eyes in every public sector agency. So many of the internal complaint handling units also have a larger focus of fostering integrity in government. The sanctions that can follow an adverse funding of ombudsman are realistic. Worry for most public servants. Foremost of the ombudsman power is to publish an adverse report, which can bring discomfort and even shame those at fault. This can damage a person's career prospect, which is usually a more real and practical worry for criminal prosecution than for criminal prosecution or a judicial determination of wrongdoing. Because for your career to be damaged forever, because ombudsman have found adverse funding against you, your family is disgraced, you yourself is disgraced. So that even more worrying than taking you to court where you can say, well, I was not given a good judgment or whatever. So what we say is that the financial loss from a damaged career can be greater than the hard-edged penalties that are deterrent to corruption in criminal law. Capable ombudsman institutions are those who are well-resourced, headed by strong leaders with visible integrity and commitment, and situate among a network of state and non-state actors who work together on promoting good governance. whilst the weak institutions or the weak ombudsmen are those undermined by inadequate political will and with limited financial resources, staff capacity, and independence. So, recognizing that there are multiple actors as well as multiple pressures on institutions to promote a sustainable and accountable and transparent government, the Ombudsman institution should work in synergy with other oversight institutions with horizontal and vertical mechanisms to ensure that efforts are mutually reinforcing. Ombudsman efforts are important complement to the promotion of more responsive and accountable governance and to provide redress to citizens. An enduring concern of Ombudsman Office is to improve government generally, both through individual complaints handling and by promoting systematic reforms. Many Ombudsman offices see themselves as a champion of complaint handling principle, freedom of information, and whistleblower protection. Those are part of the fabric of democratic values that can strengthen a system of government and act as a barrier and disincentive to corrupt and damaging practices. The flexibility of the Ombudsman model means that integrity in government can be promoted in numerous ways: in investigation, in reports, in public speeches, in parliamentary submissions, and meetings with senior government officials. So, ladies and gentlemen, finally, based on the above, I can confidently conclude that the Ombudsman can and do fight corruption successfully when they have the enabling government and leadership, and when they have the enabling environment and leadership. The factors that determine success of an Ombudsman institution broadly speak as follows. Just a few points there. 1, independence as embedded in the financial and legislative autonomy. 2, courageous leadership that's able to mobilize public support. And 3, mandate to go after high-level as well as middle-level officers and powers to sanction them. And 4, professional and well-trained staff. And finally, a clear system for resource and performance measurement. I thank you.
I'm being consistent. Since I didn't give the profile of the first one, I decided to do it the same way. Dr. Roger Koranteng, an award-winning specialist. Dr. Koranteng has been working on governance and corruption issues in his role as advisor and head of public sector governance at the Commonwealth for more than a decade. In that time, he has established networks of anti-corruption agencies in Commonwealth Africa and the Caribbean that promotes inter-agency collaboration and learning. In 2013, Dr. Koranteng was responsible for establishing the Commonwealth Africa Anti-Corruption Center in Botswana, which is the prime vehicle for building and strengthening the capacity of anti-corruption agencies in Commonwealth Africa. Most recently, December 2018, Dr. Koranteng was awarded the Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani International Anti-Corruption Excellence Award for his work on tackling corruption in both Commonwealth and non-Commonwealth countries held in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. That is a brief profile of the paper presenter on strengthening Ombudsman for fighting corruption, lesson of experience. He has given his Ombudsman structure in 4 generation category. It talks about the first generation to be what? Ombudsman. When ombudsman is merged with anti-corruption together. That's the first stage. It now talks about when you separate ombudsman and anti-corruption, and that's the system we have in Nigeria. Because we have ombudsman, that is a public complaints commission, as a separate entity in Nigeria, and then we have anti-corruption agencies also as a separate entity. That is the second stage. Now, the third stage that Nigeria has also embraced, I don't know yet whether we have embraced the third category, but we can see that there are industry ombudsman now that specializes on certain areas where corruption, at highest level. We talk about, when you talk about, for instance, you can find anti-corruption agency to be ombudsman on police, ombudsman in army, ombudsman to International Assembly. I'm the chief ombudsman of the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Because we are democratically, elected into the Senate to represent our people. And when you look at 36 states plus FCT, we have 37 states in Nigeria. And therefore, many of our constituent members don't know the role ombudsman play in their life. We are about educating them now to ensure that the representative of the people in the parliament play a very major role to resolve issues as fast as possible than going to court, a regular court system. The regular court system has not played major role because there are shortage of judges in our courts. But when you look at the National Assembly, for instance, in a particular session, over 1,000 cases or 11,000 cases, 70% of them will be resolved. But when these cases were to be passed through the court system, they will be there to perpetuity. Many are not resolved because there are a lot of pressures on the judges. Therefore, adjournment till most of the respondents, most of the petitioners, we have to give up. Because you cannot be represented in the law court without paying the lawyers. That is what they are trained for. If they are to represent you in a particular case, they need to be paid. And since majority of our people that are democratically elected us don't have the means and the capacity to pursue their rights in the law court, the best way is to come to the ombudsman of the Senate or ombudsman of the House of Representatives. In Nigerian system, which I'm used to, is what I'm using as an example. So that at least this can be replicated in other parliaments, all over the world. We talk about, in Nigeria, we have the two tier, the upper chamber and the lower chamber. Lower chamber is represented by 360 representatives, while in the upper chamber, Nigeria is represented by 109, senators. And therefore, we have 469 representatives. Therefore, that Nigerians who are aggrieved, who are being cheated, who don't have the means to go to court, can approach the National Assembly for adjudication, for peace. The same thing, the Ombudsman in Nigeria, for instance, the Public Complaint Commission has offices in all the 37 states of the Federation. The ordinary man who don't have the means to come to Abuja, ordinary man who don't have the money to approach a lawyer to seek for justice, we approach ombudsman at the state level. We are also pleading to go fully to the third level, where ombudsman, according to Dr. Rogers, can be an industrial ombudsman. What of those who are in the petroleum sector? Those who are in the agri sector, those who are in the communication sector, those who are in different sectors of the economy, where rights of individuals have been infringed upon by industry operative. They can go to those ombudsmen to seek for justice, because an ordinary supplier to a particular AYZ company that has paid for that supplies And because of the fact that he's handicapped, he's been shortchanged for 3-4 months. He was not supplied. And whereas his money is being used as working capital in that particular industry. So have an ombudsman where, industrial ombudsman, where such person should go to complain. So that his rights can be what? Can be sought for him or her. But this is what we are envisaging, to get to the 3rd generation level of ombudsman. And by the grace of God, I believe that this lecture will be of significant importance for the participant in this particular, international ombudsman or ombuds expo that will replicate in our various regions. And I want to also stress that one of the major techniques of ombudsman to resolve petition is ADR, alternative dispute resolution. This will achieve a lot of results for the people we represent, rather than referring such cases to court. On this note, I want to once again thank Dr. Roger for his experience he has shared with us. On that note, I want to say we give him a round of applause. Let me now change the tactics or the procedure followed. The next presenter, the next paper presenter is Justice Irene Muyagonja. I don't know whether the pronunciation is very correct, but I think you'll bear with me. Okay, I think the paper presenter will now be Mr. David Makumbi. That is, when ombudsman fight corruption, lesson for experience, to be presented by David Makumbi. Mr. David Makumbi is a qualified advocate of High Court of Uganda and all courts subordinate thereto. He has nearly 2 decades of experience as an advocate, and more particularly in the field of constitutional and administrative law. He is also knowledgeable in matters of public administration and a good governance. He holds a Bachelor's of Law, LLB honors degree from Makerere University of Kampala and a Master's of Law, LLM honors degree from Utrecht University in the field of comparative public law and good governance. Presently, he works at the Inspectorate of Government, which doubles as the National Ombudsman and Anti-Corruption Office in Uganda. That means they adopted the 2nd level generation ombudsman system in Uganda. He has worked there since the year 2000 in various capacities and is presently holding the portfolio of Director of Ombudsman Affairs at the Inspectorate of Government, at the Inspectorate of Government, Donna Parchment Brown. It is my pleasure to invite Mr. David Makumbi to make his presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, our chair for this session, the distinguished guests and participants here all present. I am honored to stand here. I want to clarify that I'm really standing here in the shoes of the Inspector General of Government, Justice Irene Muyagonja, who would have loved very much to be here with you, but she is presently in transition, having been recently appointed to the Court of Appeal, which is also our constitutional court in Uganda. So she's in between offices as we speak, and it was not a very convenient moment for her to travel. So she asked me to step into her shoes, and I'm standing here in those shoes. Fortunately, they are not high heels. But I'm delivering this address on her behalf. So please accept these words from Justice Irene Mulyagonja, who sends you her greetings. My fellow heads of ombudsman institutions, mediators, anti-corruption authorities, colleagues, in all your capacities, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to speak to you on the topic of the Ombudsman or Ombuds Office being involved in fighting corruption. This is a rather unique circumstance because the history of the Ombudsman or Ombuds offices tends to highlight the Ombuds as the avenue via which citizens address complaints or grievances about public administration in the hope that the Ombuds will engage government to ensure that the citizens' grievances or concerns are resolved. In this sense, the engagement is largely in the arena of public administration and is by its very nature conciliatory, non-confrontational, and focused on ensuring public officials accept responsibility and take the lead in responding to citizens' grievances. On the other hand, when addressing the issue of corruption, which has been defined as the abuse of public office for private gain, the intervention in this regard is usually based on the enforcement of laws, which criminalize particular acts done in the execution of public administration. The intervention typically involves aggressive investigation of alleged criminal conduct in public offices and is usually expected to result in fines, imprisonment, or confiscation of assets. This approach is therefore clearly confrontational and punitive in nature. In light of the foregoing, you will therefore not typically find an ombudsman or ombuds office also serving as an anti-corruption enforcement agency. However, in the case of the Inspectorate of Government of Uganda, the mandate of ombudsman and anti-corruption are housed in the same institution. Our constitution provides that the Inspectorate shall have the functions to promote and foster adherence to the rule of law and principles of natural justice in administration, to eliminate and foster the elimination of corruption, abuse of office, to promote fair, efficient, and good governance in public offices, to supervise enforcement of the Leadership Code of Conduct, to investigate acts, omissions, advice, decisions, or recommendations by public officers, which are done in exercise of administrative functions, and to stimulate public awareness about the values of constitutionalism in general and the activities of the office. Now, in addition to those functions, the Inspectorate of Government is specifically empowered to investigate, cause investigation, arrest, cause arrest, prosecute, or cause prosecution in respect of cases involving corruption, abuse of authority, or of public office. A keener look at the functions that have just been outlined will reveal that there are three distinct mandates apparent from a functional point of view. The first is the traditional ombudsman mandate, the second is the anti-corruption mandate, and the third is the Leadership Code enforcement mandate, which here in Nigeria I believe is done by the Code of Conduct Bureau. The leadership enforcement mandate is for the most part similar to the anti-corruption mandate, but we maintain it as distinct because it establishes a specific code of conduct for a distinct category of public officials beyond the rest of the public officials in Uganda. The practical reality of managing the mandates described above is quite challenging, to say the least. This is because the approaches in terms of the implementation of these mandates vary significantly. On the one hand, as ombudsman, the inspectorate is expected to be conciliatory, mediatory, advisory in nature, and largely dependent on moral authority and persuasive value when standing between citizens and government. On the other hand, the inspectorate, as an anti-corruption agency and enforcer of leadership code standards, is expected to investigate and aggressively pursue punitive measures against public officials before the courts of law and the Leadership Code Tribunal. The challenge, therefore, lies in reconciling what are clearly divergent approaches in handling the constitutional responsibility of the Inspectorate of Government. We've tried to address this problem by setting up distinct departments in the Inspectorate of Government which project the respective mandates. In that regard, we have the Directorate of Ombudsman Affairs, which by its very nature, by its very name, describes its responsibility. We then have the Directorates of Special Investigations and Leadership Code, which project the anti-corruption and leadership code enforcement mandates respectively. However, it should be noted that the institution draws its personnel from the same skill pool, which means that upon transfer from one directorate to another, our officers have to quickly adjust their investigative approach and wear an appropriate hat as the task may demand. However, this has proven to be quite challenging in reality, especially in terms of developing capacity in the respective disciplines, as the officers risk becoming the proverbial jack of all trades, but a master of none. Steps are therefore being taken to assign officers to specific areas of the broad mandate and to ultimately develop specialized skills for the respective disciplines. However, despite the above, we still face challenges, especially with regard to the courts, which do not fully understand our broad mandate. We've had several occasions where courts of law have subjected our work as ombudsman to judicial review. This is despite the fact that, as ombudsman, we restrict ourselves to making recommendations as a result of our interventions and not decisions or orders of a binding nature, such as those which would attract a requirement for judicial review. We strive to achieve implementation of our decisions through the thoroughness of our findings, enunciation of the law, and continuous stakeholder engagement. In this respect, therefore, there should ideally be no decision that is attributable to the Inspectorate of Government until implementation of the recommendation, at which point it becomes the decision of the implementing authority and not the Inspectorate, such as to warrant a judicial review of what the Inspectorate has done. Unfortunately, it is not uncommon to find the courts mixing up the authority of the office exercised in its anti-corruption capacity with that of the Ombudsman. And ultimately, decisions arise in court that water down the authority of the office with regard to the Ombudsman mandate. This is a situation that we are trying to address through sensitization of our judiciary about the unique features of the Inspectorate of Government's functions. We also tend to find it problematic at times in terms of engagement due to the contrasting approaches. It is not easy to conduct a stakeholder engagement or build consensus in an institution as an ombudsman when the same institution, that being the Inspectorate, actively conducts investigations into allegations of a criminal nature. In light of the above, our institution is currently considering how we can deconstruct the distinct features of our mandate and strategically steer the respective mandates with a clear line of sight right from the very top at the leadership level of the Inspectorate of Government. The Constitution of Uganda establishes the Inspectorate of Government as consisting of the Inspector General of Government and such number of deputies as Parliament shall prescribe. Presently, Parliament has prescribed for 2 Deputy Inspectors General in the Inspectorate of Government. It is against this background that we are considering that the anti-corruption mandate and the Ombudsman mandate must be clearly distinguishable at the leadership level by allocating specific persons in the Inspectorate's leadership to embody and identify with either the anti-corruption mandate or the Ombudsman mandate, but not both at the same time. This, in a nutshell, is how I would briefly summarize to you the unique situation of the Inspectorate of Government as both an ombudsman and an anti-corruption office. We have not seen a specific need to separate the mandates, as ultimately we see that they all contribute towards the goal of elimination of corruption. As Dr. Koranteng has already so ably explained, there is a responsibility that comes even in terms of the ombudsman with regard to tackling corruption, and it is in that spirit that we have established that much of the corruption in Uganda is driven by weak governance and poor administrative systems. And it is our desire as an office to leverage our ombudsman function to fight corruption alongside the traditional anti-corruption approaches. I thank you for listening to me.
Yeah. Let's give him a round of applause. He has been able to share his experience, Ugandan experience, with all of us. And I believe we have a lot to take home. He has been able to help us beat some time, Abi, save some time. Like I said, you see, this type of expo is for country to share experiences of ombudsman. And I believe that we have gained a lot today. And Mr. Makumbi has given the Ugandan experience. And he has been able to let us know that corruption is defined as abuse of public office. And fair hearing need to be given before you can arrive at a resolution that will be acceptable to both parties. And like I said in my comment, that resolving issues, there are various techniques of resolving issues. And we all agree that as representative of people, either in the executive arm of government or in the legislative arm of government, as in the parliament, the common objective to achieve is that people have problems, who have issues with government officials, with public, sector operators. The common thing an ombudsman wants to achieve is to be fair to both parties and quick resolution of disputes. Quick resolution of disputes brings a lot of advantages to the system. At times when you neglect that these are just a set of people, when government, the power, when the power blindfolded also in government, they cause problem for the system. And therefore, it is important to us as ombudsman to take it home that there are many advantages of alternative dispute resolution. We are alternative dispute, adjudicators. We cannot award damages. We cannot award liability. As far as Nigeria is concerned, as legislators in the parliament, when issues or petitions are brought to us, our own is to sit down to give fair hearing to both parties. You listen to the person bringing the petition. You also ensure to listen to the person who is to respond to the petition. On that note, it is left for you as represent the people in the legislature to recommend. We cannot decide. We can recommend. We can only recommend to the legislature, that is to the people in parliament. As a committee in ethics and public petition, we cannot take decision. We can only take, hear the petitioners, hear out all of the respondents, and make a recommendation to what? To the parliament for resolution of the parliament to be taken. And when that is taken, that is the resolution of the whole Nigeria. That is the resolution of the parliament, the parliament representing people in Kenya, Ethiopia, and so on and so forth. What we are saying, therefore, in order to what? to get that resolution accepted and for implementation, it's always good to use alternative dispute resolution. And that has really worked over the years. That you find out that cases in court for several years, when they are brought to the parliament or brought to the ombudsman, and once the ombudsman is able to be fair in all ramifications to both parties, their decision will always be upheld by the people who have issues. And as much as practicable, this has actually given what? Credence to the decisions of many ombudsmen where they are fair. And you see cases of 10,000, 11,000 in a particular year, you can find about 60 or 70% already resolved and been implemented by the parties involved. And for a take-home, we have advantages of alternative dispute resolution. One, it enhances access to justice. Justice. Two, it is timely and faster. Three, it is also cost effective. Bearing in mind that the people we represent in the legislature, they don't have the means to fight the big corporations that has infringed on their rights. They go to court, they have money to hire lawyers, SANs. We call them Senior Advocate of Nigeria here. They have read the acumen of their profession in what? In law. So when you want to even make consultations, sir, somebody has infringed on my rights. So we say, drop a check of 5 million there before I can even listen to your complaint. Where would the ordinary man get 5 million? Just to hear the complaint that I want to drop a complaint, sir. Senior advocate. The senior will say, well, I have many cases before me, but if you can afford to drop 5 million for consultation, your case will be taken. Where would ordinary man in my constituency have 5 million when the government of Ondo State or government of other states infringe on his right or her rights? This is where ombudsman become very, very relevant. To maintain peace, to carry people along. Therefore, it is also user-friendly. There are issues over the years. You find that even a married woman, a married man with his wife, they will be in court, maybe for a property title, for years. And therefore, when this type of issues are brought before you as an ombudsman, what is important is to bring the two of them together, talk to them. We have success stories that I will tell you from this alternative resolution stories. Then it is also confidential. There's principle of confidentiality in it that makes issues be resolved as fast as possible. Then it brings a lot of qualitative outcomes. And therefore, those of us who are ombudsmen in our various countries, it is important for us to ensure that disputes are resolved between the parties. And then there must be what? Participation. When you participate in a decision that will resolve your issue, when it is resolved and you enter an agreement, the agreement can be enforceable against you. That is, you call A, you call B. This issue, can't we go this way and make it a win-win situation? If it's a win-win situation for the parties, it's always a yield more result to the system. But when you go to court, one will win, when we lose, one will lose. So when you lose fully. When you win fully. Don't underrate that man who lost fully. He may even be the one that is supposed to be, he or she may be the one that is right. But the system, because there's no money for him to prosecute it, the judgment for the guilty may be given in favor of those who are guilty. And that man, my brother, can destroy a whole village because he has been treated unfairly. But ombudsman is to stand firm and ensure that in most cases resolved, it should be a win-win situation. On that note, that's my own brief comments. On that note, and I think I will, when we take the last speaker, I will also enumerate again on the success stories of alternative dispute resolution. It is therefore my pleasure again to introduce the last speaker, Honorable Donna Parchment Brown. Honorable Donna Parchment Brown was appointed Jamaica's political ombudsman effective Monday, November 16, 2016. She was sworn in at a ceremony at King's House. Mrs. Parchment Brown is a dispute resolution specialist, alternative dispute resolution specialist, who was called to bar more than 37 years ago and has served in both the private as well as the public sectors. She earned national recognition for her work in dispute resolution and is the holder of the Order of Distinction, Commander Class. The political ombudsman, who is appointed by the Governor General after consulting with the Prime Minister and leader of the opposition, has statutory responsibility to oversee and investigate adherence to Jamaica's Code of Political Conduct. She succeeds Bishop Harold Blair, who resigned in 2013. It is therefore my singular honor and privilege to invite Honorable Donna Parchment Brown to make his paper presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Senator, I'm grateful to you for your kind introduction and your interventions this morning. And I also want to take the opportunity to congratulate the organizers, especially the Chief Ombudsman of Nigeria and Professor, I have to make sure I get the names correct so as not to, and Professor Ayeni for organizing this very important event here in Abuja, Nigeria. Please permit me also to acknowledge the presence of Jamaica's High Commissioner to Nigeria, His Excellency, Mr. Ernesto Reed, who is sitting at the front and has been kind enough to come in to give support to the small Jamaican and Caribbean delegation that's attending. And I must say, he feels very happy to be wearing a scarf from Nigeria, from Ethiopia, a country which is very closely connected to Jamaica, land we love. On behalf of fellow Jamaicans at home and abroad, I congratulate you on this initiative. So many wonderful people who have inspired with the information shared. Our common chord is that we are protecting our people against violation of rights, abuse of power, unfair decisions, and maladministration. I am pleased to adopt the presentations of all those who have come before me this morning because I am of one mind with them on what they have said. I'm being assisted by a kind gentleman, and as we go to the overview of the presentation this morning, I thought I would give you a picture of Jamaica too. You know, Jamaica is that little piece of rock in the Caribbean that maybe broke off from Mother Africa and sailed away into the Caribbean Sea, just ready to receive us when we got there. But today I want to talk a little bit about integrity, then a little bit about Jamaica's political history, and I also want to talk about some of the key activities of the Office of the Political Ombudsman, and share with you a little of the things that keep me awake at night, and probably keep all of you awake at night as well. Finally, I want to touch on where we go next. And of course, I would be happy to entertain questions. We have used a very simple definition of integrity because while within this room, we are a room of experts, the people we serve are experts in their life. And they want to know that our technical language is interpreted for them to be able to see themselves in the work that we try to do. And so integrity is bound up, in my mind, in important principles of good governance and the rule of law. All these are vital to building a decent country. Decent countries that are fit for our citizens. So in our Vision 2030, we would like to see Jamaica as a place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business. But let us be clear, this matter of integrity is a modern concept. It's not an ancient concept, it's a modern idea, integrity in government. And it is really driven by our citizens' growing understanding of their importance as owners of the state, entitled to respect and to good service, rather than as subjects of rulers or leaders who can do with us as they wish. So integrity in public life really touches on a number of things. I believe our citizens are entitled to expect certain conduct from all public officials. And integrity is a crucial determinant of their trust in us. The public's willingness to partner with the state depends on trust. Integrity requires a credible electoral system, which we enjoy in Jamaica. It has been recognized globally. However, even with that, we are currently updating the voters list and tamper-proof electoral cards before elections, which are constitutionally due by February 2021, but which could be held next month. We want a system, and this is where the Ombudsman comes in, even the political Ombudsman, a system based on laws, not on privilege. A system based on laws, not privileges. That breeds trust. So what then is the effect of integrity guidelines? Well, first of all, they should help to prevent corruption and foster high standards of behavior. They should help maintain and restore confidence in the institutions of government. So what gave rise in Jamaica to the need for these safeguards and protection? Like many other countries, Jamaica's written history, and I say this with fear of contradiction, but without apology, our written history was without integrity. In our case, we can date it back to 1494, when the first colonial powers came to the island of Jamaica, as the Spaniards, led by one Chris Columbus, landed. And from his moment of landing, we saw genocide against the native Taino people. Then we saw the brutality associated with enslavement of Africans in the Caribbean until 1838. Later, as a crown colony country, we experienced a bloody suppression of our citizens in 1865. Sadly, this tradition of violence also played itself out after independence in the 1980s and 90s, where the political rivalry led to violence as part of the landscape. Jamaica's history, since 1938, there was a public uprising by citizens against colonial oppression and for fair labor laws. In 1938 and 1943, the two major political parties were formed and sought to engage the working class, urban and rural voters. But there were many conflicts between rival gangs, high levels of violence, large numbers of murders associated with the 1980 elections. We were at a brink. We were about to fall off a cliff. And what did we do? In 1988, both major political parties started a dialogue which was facilitated by civil society, church, academia, and other public influencers to bring peace and integrity to the political life of the beautiful island of Jamaica and her beloved citizens. So over that period, we had had a number of commissions of parliaments formed. I just want to mention the Office of the Public Defender. You heard her yesterday. We have an Office of the Children's Advocate. We have an Integrity Commission to receive reports from parliamentarians and public officers as to their money, annual reports. We have an Independent Commission of Investigations that looks at police excess. We have the Electoral Commission that governs the entire electoral process, of which we are very proud today. And we have the peculiar institution, the Political Ombudsman. Now, we work together to achieve good outcomes for our citizens, and we're each charged with providing independent, neutral expert advice to the Parliament and with promoting integrity in different aspects of public life. Now, the Office of the Political Ombudsman was created in 2002 and charged with promoting harmony and ensuring adherence to laws and codes of conduct for politics. We have the ability to investigate complaints, call witnesses, and broker solutions. And our duty is to make recommendations to the political party leaders for corrective actions. If they fail to act, we have the right to table a report in Parliament in relation to our recommendations so that action may be taken. The Office of the Political Ombudsman is not under any ministry or any department of government. It is purely accountable to the public through Parliament. That doesn't mean that there is not slow payment of my money, although I don't have a minister, and failure to give me things I need, although I don't have a minister. But technically, it is designed for a bipartisan committee to be the group that I would go to if there's any need for any special action. Very important for us is the Agreement and Declaration on Political Conduct, which we call the code. And I know many countries have codes of conduct for different officials. As you would have heard earlier, most of my life experience in the last 20 years as an attorney has been as an advocate and a practitioner of alternative dispute resolution. That has served me in very, very, very good stead in this office. There is, of course, a hunger in the public for destruction of people when they perceive they have done something wrong. But there's hardly any point in destroying somebody for breach of the code if that doesn't cause them to be out of office. What we want to see is improved behavior. So the agreement, it's important for us to recognize. I say this to the politicians all the time. It's not Donna Parchment Brown's code. It's your code. You made the agreement. You went into our Cathedral of Parliament and you signed a paper and said you promise to do these things. And then you said, while we've made that promise, we want to put in an institution that will help us keep our promises. And that's who we are. So as time has gone on, between 2002 and 2005 and now, newer politicians don't feel that same connection to the code of conduct as those who had gone through the bad years. Because the ones who went through the bad years remember why we needed to do something. So I hear people saying now, oh, we're mature politically. We don't need this sort of support or oversight because we're politically mature. And then I had to tell them, well, there are many countries in the world that have called themselves politically mature. Right now we're watching CNN and the BBC and we are wondering when and how such a title could apply anywhere on earth. So as we say in Jamaica, let us take sleep and mark death. If it can happen there, then it can happen also, thank you very much, in our countries. I'm grateful for the water. I do a lot of talking, but sometimes I do have this challenge, so do forgive me. Now, thank you very much, sir. Now, it's important to know that the code is really focused on the conduct. It's on the conduct of persons. And it's binding. That's what they signed to. They said this code shall be binding on officials of political parties, members of parliament, senators, councillors, executives of political parties, not ministries of government now, but political parties. And they agreed that those breaches would be investigated by the political ombudsman because there's an understanding that it's very easy to spend a lot of time punishing public servants. But many times the politician goes beyond their authority and instructs, facilitates, prevents actions by good public servants who may be afraid or who may feel it's still better to stay because they can do some good. But when the politicians are themselves accountable, not only in the criminal law, but within their own code, that's very helpful. So sometimes though, the breaches overlap with the criminal law. For example, right now, we have a minister, his wife, his daughter, and some other persons who have recently been charged by the Financial Investigation Division and the major organized crime body for breaches of their duty because they have used public funds for private gain. Now, that was a matter that my office was aware of, but without the capacity of these divisions where they had 100 skilled persons they could put to the task and where they could bring a criminal sanction. So I opted to step back to allow for a criminal sanction to go forward. The code says public officials must not act corruptly. So as we look at the code and the actual standards that are in it, first of all, they agreed to non-violence and non-intimidation. So it means no weapons, no bullets to be distributed by politicians. Then they talked about safety of private and public property, because in election time, sometimes people's assets get damaged. Avoiding confrontation, public utterances, and this one has really detained me. I don't know if this happens in your countries, but between social media and political platforms, a lot is said that should never be said. So if you incite violence, if you make defamatory statements, if you're malicious towards a politician, his family members or his political parties, those are breaches of the code. And I have spent a lot of time dealing with complaints in relation to those matters. I mean things as extreme as a political youth organization describing the leader of a political party as Hitler, or a youth leader of a political party describing a fellow member of the Senate by saying, if you lie down with John, you will rise up with fleas. Really outrageous. And so generally that is where the mediation skill comes in. And I'm pleased to say though, when they come in and we work together, I sometimes have to make the issues public because they're already in the public domain, and it's important for the public to know that these people are accountable. And integrity in public life is also about the kind of conduct that we consider acceptable. So we do a number of things. We conduct investigations, we make recommendations, we provide public education and partnerships. We believe negotiation and mediation is critical. What we do in elections and campaigns, though, I'd like to share with you a little bit on, because I think this is where, again, my office is perhaps something you're not accustomed to. So what we do, once an election is announced, all candidates are asked to come. We have 13 parishes, each one headed by a custos, who is a representative of the Governor General, who is a representative of the Queen. We're in the Commonwealth, that's our structure. So in each parish, the candidates are brought together to sign a document saying for the campaign and forever, they will obey the code. So this is a civic ceremony that we put on, which includes public education. And then we monitor the activities of all 63 constituencies and 228 divisions to see that throughout the campaign they act within the law. For that, we have in each parish a detective sergeant of police, and we have the support of the local police to do investigations. And we monitor those activities. Things like vote buying and bribery takes up a lot of my time. Gathering information on their breaches of the Representation of the People Act, under which, for example, a candidate, let us say before the election, I was a chairman of the board of the tourism company or the oil company, that's the government board, and they have a lot of money. The law says those entities may not make corporate donations to a politician. So if you get money from a state agency to run your campaign, or let us say they come and they build a road in your constituency so that the people will see that you can do something, they are required by law to return that money. Or if you have a government contract 2 years before, 2 years after, and you make a corporate donation, that's okay, but you must file a return within 14 days saying, I made a donation. Now what's been different about my period of service with these new laws is that I get into my car with my CPO and my driver, and we go to these places. I take pictures of the license plates of motor vehicles. I take pictures of roadworks. I call these people. I write to them and I explain. I've had a leader of a political party publicly state that certain corporate donations they were getting and certain work they were doing on the road would stop as a result of the intervention of the office. Because all of that really is vote buying. All of that really is bribery. All of that is using public resources for political benefit of individual politicians who have that access. That's not made me popular, but I'm the first of 9 children, so I already have a cheering team. I don't need to be popular beyond my siblings. So, you know, that works quite well for me. My time is up, but I'd just like to share 2 short points with you. During the elections, we have introduced an interesting institution called the Election Center. The Election Center is co-chaired by the Director of Elections and the Political Ombudsman. Once the election is announced, we are constituted. So we sit together on nomination day, we sit together on election day, along with some NGOs, the police, and the army. And if we hear of any problem in any area of the country, each one of us would call on the resources we have there to try to address the problem so that the nomination can go well and the election can go well. Occasionally we'll meet in between if something has arisen that we think is so serious it could affect the fairness of the election. So in 2016, for example, during our general elections, there was some violence in a particular area. And so we called a meeting, and coming out of our election center meeting, we asked the constituted authority to instruct that all campaigning cease in that area. So for the next 2 weeks, there was no campaigning allowed in the area that had caused us the concern. So we think that sort of thing really helps with integrity, because violence can stop people from going out to vote. And therefore what you're getting is a false reading of what the will of the people really is. The main thing is we do it cooperatively in support of the gold standard of the Electoral Commission. And I'm pleased to say the Organization of American States, which monitored the elections in 2016, was kind enough to recognize the work of the Office of the Political Ombudsman as a good practice. They said best practice, but I don't use that expression because we can only do good practice, and when you modify it for your situation, it could become a best practice for you. It's just an idea that we can share. Just to say, 75% in a recent survey say they believe politicians are corrupt. 66% say we don't want to speak about politics because we think it's risky. We worry that if there's a loss of public voice and if there's conflict between the political parties, then we don't get good public policy. If we don't get good public policy because of this lack of integrity, failure of the rule of law, lack of good governance, then our countries, we will not have good roads, we will not have good schools, we will not live in good houses, we will not have good hospitals, we will not have a good justice system. Lifestyle of our people won't be what it needs to be. This is why these institutions exist. We're not here just to make people do the right thing. We're here so the public can get the benefit of the resources that belong to them, that they hire these public officials, politicians and public servants to work for us. So I say to the Jamaicans, I am you. I speak on your behalf, not on mine. But I tell you this, I speak to our politicians with the utmost respect, because being a politician is a hard job. It's a sacrificial job, it's a dangerous job, it's a job that demands integrity. So we have worked hard to create youth champions. Surprisingly, young people are very interested in politics. They want clean politics, and many have asked me to be youth ambassadors for the Office of the Political Ombudsman, and that is being developed because 2020 will be a campaign year in Jamaica, and we're going to need all hands on deck. So what's next is the extensive campaign promoting integrity in public life, making sure the office is above reproach, and really continuing to build a strong relationship with political leaders. So because I'm the political ombudsman, I have the leader, I have the prime minister, and the leader of the opposition in my WhatsApp. So if there's something I really need to get to them quickly on, I WhatsApp the prime minister or I WhatsApp the leader of the opposition. Because sometimes I need to talk to them quickly and confidentially so they can correct a problem that's threatening Jamaica and threatening their parties. Every single one of us, we're honored to serve the people of our country. We're honored to be part of the education and advocacy for integrity in public life. It is a lonely job, and I'm strengthened by being here with all of you. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share with you our challenges, but also to share with you the good work that is being done to move us to be the great country that we're capable of being in Jamaica land we love, as I extend warm regards to every other delegate here today. Thank you.
To her. I believe everybody was very, very happy. And it was, he has overused our time. Well, we've all been carried away, and because the Jamaican experience is a good one. Because when she was delivering the paper, I was comparing the system in Jamaica with Nigeria. Well, I'm a politician too, because she is a political ombudsman. And therefore, I attentively listened to her, and I will encourage her to leave a copy of that Jamaican, agreement with us before traveling back to Jamaica, because we have a lot to gain from that experience. Maybe we can introduce it to our system, and some other countries representatives here present who can also take Jamaica experience as a model. Because I believe that if this model, is copied or practiced in most countries, governed politically, it will be a good experience for us together. Because from the agreement, it says it's negotiated by political parties and the civil societies, and they sign a code. Now nobody, no political party, should contravene the rule of the land. All what you have here is being contravened in Nigeria here. Yes, we have to face the fact. Because, you see, a code that is binding all political parties. We have 2 major political parties, or 3 in Nigeria. And as political ombudsman, I will say I am a political ombudsman because I am in the Senate. Yes. Because I am the political ombudsman of the Senate of Federal Republic of Nigeria, where all representatives from Nigeria are present. So this code should be replicated to correct our system. No system is perfect. We can only improve on it, except we don't want to deceive ourselves. There is a political toggery all over Nigeria. When we are going to election, it's as if we are going to go to war. Here. Yes, that is the truth. If we are going to election, some people, those of us who are in politics, just think for political power at this particular level, some of us, we have done our will, ready, before going to war. Politics in Nigeria is war. But if a system like that of Jamaica is put in place, many of us will have rest of mind. Even when you even win the election, some people use political culture to intimidate you. They go to court on flimsy excuses that they are in the ruling power. We can see change the mandate of the people. It's unfair. These are things we need to correct as political ombudsman. So, Honorable Donna Punishment Brown, you have done justice to your paper. And again, she demands another round of applause. I've taken my time as the chairman of this session to allow all paper presenters to deliver their paper.